Welcome back to the Meeple Marathon and my continued 12 Days of Christmas challenge. Today I'm going to be talking about my top 7 engine builders. Now, engine builders are essentially games where when you start off, there's very little you can do, very little actions you can take, you have very little resources. And throughout the game, you are adding to that engine in whatever means, and so that by the end of the game, your turns are much bigger. The resources you gain at the beginning of each turn are bigger, so you can take more actions. So that's essentially an engine builder for those of you who might not be aware. And I do have a few here that didn't quite make the cut, and as before, I like to just quickly cover these. So just missing the cut was Everdell, Le Havre, Above and Below, and Great Western Trail. Now, some of you might be thinking or heard, Above and Below? Wait, that was, just didn't quite make your narrative story-driven game. But if you think about it, Above and Below is all about, there's more to it, but your engine is your little grouping of people. Your workers, and they have various actions that they can take, and they specialize in certain things, and they make certain things easier. So the more workers you start adding and the better workers you start adding, the more actions you can take each round, and the easier they make those actions. You start the game off with, I think it's like 3 very basic workers, and as you add more workers, you're increasing your engine. You have to think about your workers as that engine that you're building up throughout the game. But didn't quite make the list because there's a lot of other stuff going on in that game, and there's a lot of other better engine builders on this list. So without further ado, let's get to number 7, and that is Anachrony. So Anachrony, I have mentioned previously, but it has this post-apocalyptic trying to build up your asymmetrical faction throughout time, and there's this time travel mechanic. But you can see here, and here's even a better picture, the biggest aspect, or there's really 2 big aspects of what builds up your engine in this game, and that is, 1, your workers. Here you can see that you are going to be adding workers to your available worker pool, and sometimes they're exhausted or asleep and you have to wake them up to be able to use them. But you start the game off with very few, and as the game moves on, you start gaining more and more, so you can take more actions throughout the game. Some of these people you're going to stick in these exosuits and send off somewhere, and others you're going to be placing on these locations within your city that you're building, this post-apocalyptic city that you're building, even though the end game is to get on a ship and get off the planet before the meteors take over and kill everything. But the other part of your engine is your city here, that obviously adding more buildings is going to give you more and more opportunities to do things with those people. So again, this is like a worker placement game, probably at its heart, but is also has these very important engine building mechanics. And then there's this time travel aspect that really makes the game quite unique. But again, this is a very crunchy, heavy game. There's a lot to think about, but there is some really nice engine building mechanics in Anachrony. All right, coming up next at number 6 is Monsterlands. Now, Monsterlands, I believe this is the first time it has made it onto my list without just being like an honorable mention. I think Monsterlands is a hidden gem. I think it's a very charming game. And what is this? Oh, those are the Kickstarter dice that I'm still trying to acquire. Okay, so here you can see just generally what the board looks like. And you can see there's some people over here, some mercenaries that you can acquire. And you'll notice that they have these colored cubes next to them. There's also these items, some of which have ways to manipulate those cubes. And basically when you start the game, you're going to have these a leader and a mercenary that are going to be giving you a set of dice. And those dice are then going to be used to spend in the little kind of market resource gathering spaces, or sent out to fight the monsters and the lands that those monsters live in, to try and gain fame and bonuses and things like that. or to go on quests. And so really, the more dice you have, the more things you're able to do. The more dice you're able to send to go slay a monster, and the better chances you have of actually slaying that monster when you roll them. And the more yellow dice you have, the cheaper you can make your purchasing when you go into these resource gathering spaces. And all of that comes with hiring out your mercenary. The more mercenaries you hire, and the more items you acquire. This is a picture of the punch board, I guess. So really, it is somewhat of a worker placement game, but at the heart of it is this engine building mechanic that you are trying to continue to add mercenaries and items to your repertoire to make your life easier, to give you more actions you can take, to be able to send out more dice to attack the monsters in the land. And so really, I don't even think people think about this game as an engine builder, but it really is. Because by the beginning of the game, you're only rolling like 3 or 4 dice at the beginning of the game each turn, and by the end of the game you're probably have doubled or tripled that, and so you're just taking so many more actions and able to take on so many tougher monsters and things like that. So again, I really find this game charming. The theme is fun. It's all cute and animated. It does not take itself too seriously, so it's a little involved in the rules, but not one that you could play with an older child, certainly. So that is kind of my hidden gem on the list, and my number 6, that's Monsterlands. All right, up next is Wingspan. Again, an incredibly popular game, made my top Automa list, but the thing I love the most about Wingspan is the engine building mechanic, because as you go throughout the game, when you start the game, your board here is going to be completely empty, and you're going to be drafting or choosing birds into your hand, but then you have to play them onto this board after you've gained specific resources. But what this does, what placing birds down onto your board into your tableau, this is really a tableau builder, but that tableau is your engine, because then when you choose an action in these various rows, the further you have built out or added your birds, the better version of that action you're going to get. So when there's no birds here and you take the gain food action in this top row, you only get 1 die. And then as you go, you're going to get 1 die, but you can pay a certain resource. You can pay a resource to get a second die, and here you're going to get 2 resources, pick 2 resources out of the bird feeder, then you're going to get 2 plus option to buy a third, and here you're going to just get 3. So the more birds you place into the row, the better your gain food action is going to be. Also, when you take that action, you then work your way backwards with your little token. You place it here, and then you go backwards, stopping on every bird and seeing if that bird provides a activation bonus. So when you take this action, choosing which birds go into this row will then activate. And again, going from having at the beginning of the game a really weak turn where you take a turn and you simply gain 1 food die out of that bird feeder and gain that resource token, and that's it, that's your turn. But by the end of the game, you're placing a token here, you are gaining 3 food from the bird feeder, and then what looks like here activating 2 birds along the way because of the brown. The brown's what you're looking for. Activating 2 additional birds, all in that 1 turn. So really just a very sneaky engine builder. Tableau builder is essentially probably the proper term for this game, but really that just means it's an engine builder. That's what Everdell is, which didn't quite make the list, probably because of this one. And so really I just love how at the beginning of the game you're taking these very simple turns, and by the end of the game, your turns just feel amazing in what you can accomplish. And that, for me, is what makes a great engine builder. So that is Wingspan, an incredibly popular game. You can find it everywhere. If you don't already own it, I highly recommend it. Great theme, very pretty to look at. Nobody can complain about playing it, really. So, all right, moving on. My number 4 is Gaia Project. Gaia Project is similar to Anachrony, that it's this very heavy Euro game with lots of decisions. There's research tracks. There's, player boards here. And so just looking at this player board, this is a nice close-up of the player board, in that each of these spaces that you see here that are like lightly shaded versus the others is going to hold a building. And these buildings are going to be placed out onto your planets after you've terraformed them to create your colonies and increase your strength. But you can see they also have actions underneath them. The ones like with the hands, for example, are resources that you gain at the beginning of the game. The beginning of each round, sorry. And so the more of these spots you uncover, the resources that you gain at the beginning to do stuff with is going to increase. But one of the tricky things about Gaia Project is that when you upgrade a building, you don't just get rid of the building that you have replaced. You actually have to put it back on your player board. So you're always starting with these bottom buildings here, these very simple buildings that are, I forget what the white resource is called, but when you upgrade them to these temples, and then from temples you can go to the citadels, or I can't remember what all the names of these buildings are, but you can see the direction that the buildings can go here. And once you've unlocked all of these, then you gain a specific token from the research track, and just that aspect is very intriguing, because your engine is not necessarily just always getting better and better and better. You have to make a little bit of a sacrifice to make your engine better. So what are you willing to sacrifice? Obviously it's pretty straightforward what you're willing to sacrifice, but are you prepared for that? Are you prepared to have less of this white resource just to gain more gold at the beginning of your turn? So very interesting mechanic there. There's also, let's see if we can find a good picture of it, the research track. Here's a good picture of it, which you're going to start at the bottom of and work your way up. And so building yourself up this research track is increasing, when you take specific actions, how well you can do in those actions, how far your reach is when you want to colonize, or how cheap it is to colonize, or how much of this, I forget what the green resource is called again, raritanium. It's been a while since I played. And there's only so much room up here in this noggin. But again, combining the choices of how you take buildings off your player board, along with which research tracks you decide to move up over others, really just creates a lot of thinky choices for how you're going to manage your engine at the end of the day. And so that is my number 4, Gaia Project. All right, up next is Scythe by Stonemaier Games, similar to Wingspan. And again, this one is this very expansive area control resource management style game. But what is I think a lot of people really love about this game is, let me see if I can find a better close-up picture here. Okay, here's a better one. Here you can see that there are all of these cubes at the top of your board, all these various pieces that are put on your board, and the boards are dual layered, which really adds nicely to the game. But as you're playing, you're making decisions on certain actions that you take. You're able to either remove these discs from the bottom here, which is going to give you an additional bonus when certain people take that action, and you move them down here, it gives you an instant action. But you're also going to be removing these discs from up here, which gives you a better action up top. Basically, whenever you play Scythe, you have to choose one of these 4 actions. And you're going to have a player marker. Here's the player marker, and you're going to move it to any one. It has to move. You can't stay at the same one, but when you move it, you take that action, you take the action at the top, and then you're given the choice of whether you want to purchase something from the bottom, whether you want to add, you want to deploy a worker or deploy a mech, but those things cost something, so it's an option whether you take that action or not. But as you remove a cube from the top, you then pick a spot along the bottom, and you can see here kind of the black shaded areas where you can stick it, because that's going to make that bottom action cheaper. So you've now made the top action better, and then you can choose to make a certain bottom action cheaper, and it really just, very nicely fine-tunes your engine, but you get to make these decisions as to where it goes. So similar to Gaia Project, where you are removing something and something is revealed underneath, this one takes that concept and just makes it even better. That so many tough decisions as to which one are you going to move, what's kind of my strategy right now. Which actions do I want to make cheapest? Which actions do I want to make better? And choosing where you pull those things off from. So again, the whole engine building aspect here is centered around, in my opinion, what makes this a great engine builder is your player board and how you upgrade your player board, moving the things from one spot to another, and moving it reveals something and covers something else up, making things better or cheaper, all around. So again, that is Scythe by Stonemaier Games. All right, up next, my number 2. Yeah, Scythe was number 3. My number 2 is It's a Wonderful World. It's a Wonderful World is a very simple, basically card game with a few bits for keeping track of resources. Now, some of you may be saying, where is Seven Wonders on my list? Well, I've actually never played Seven Wonders. It's a Wonderful World is a very similar game to Seven Wonders, so keep that in mind. I just personally have never played Seven Wonders. I don't know why, but my preference, at least for now, is playing It's a Wonderful World. There is a great solo mode in It's a Wonderful World, but it is pretty much a beat your own score or score threshold type of thing. But what you're doing in It's a Wonderful World is you're starting out at the very beginning, and your starting faction has like 3 resources that you gain when the whole activation step occurs. But you have 2 rounds of card drafting before you get to the first activation step, and you choose which cards you want to take into your hand, and then you decide whether you want to put those cards down, because they're cards you're going to want to build, so you're going to have to place resources on them. You can see here, like, this green card right here takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 green resources to be able to build this card. This one takes 3 yellow resources. This one takes what looks like 4 gray and 1 black. So, and what's at the bottom is the bonuses you're going to get when you activate this card. So, thinking, ooh, do I need to increase my yellow resource engine? I'm going to build this card, so I got to get some grays and some blacks. So you need to make the decision, am I going to play this card down to build it and increase my engine, or am I going to use the card for its single resource, which you can see here, this green card would give you a single black resource. So you do your drafting, you have your hand of cards, and then from your hand of cards you need to decide, all right, which ones am I going to discard to gain a resource from, and which ones am I going to put down and try and build. And then you have this whole resource management thing until eventually, let's see if we can find a good picture of someone who has a decently built up tableau here. Here's a good one. Here's a great picture of one. So this is probably a further down. This is like an end game picture here of someone who is successful, because you stack the cards, so you're only seeing the bottom of them. And there's some just straight victory points on here. But for the most part, when the whole activation phase happens, you're going to go through here, and you're always going to start with gray and then go to black, green, yellow, blue. And you're going to say, all right, I get 1, 2, 3, 4 times however many of those types of buildings I have. I think that's 5, 6. I get 6 grays. And then you get to immediately place those grays down. And if you happen to build something, complete a build, when you place those 6 grays down, you could then immediately add it to your tableau. And if it's giving you resources that you haven't gotten to yet, basically at this point anything but black, you're going to gain those resources. And so you can instantly increase your engine during the activation phase, knowing, if you are, thinking ahead enough, knowing which resources you're going to gain and which cards are so close to being built, and are they going to come in the activation order later on? Is it going to give you green or yellow or blue, and all you need is grays and blacks? Then you're going to be able to build it and then activate it all in the same activation phase. And really, that's the name of the game, is seeing how big of a tableau you can build here, because that's then going to give you your victory points to defeat someone else. And that's it. I mean, it's really entirely a card game, except for the resource bits, which you use to place on the cards and keep track of it. But it is it's a great little game. It's not like, the best game in the world. It's not going to be number 1 on the BGG list ever, but it is a great little engine builder, and quite simple at the end of the day. So This one's easily found. And there are some expansions to it, which basically just adds more content. And there's even a little expansion that creates like a little mini campaign that you can either play solo or with other people that kind of gives you variable end game conditions you're trying to meet, things like that, which is nice, and it's not too expensive. But yeah, this is a great engine builder. If this type of mechanic really speaks to you, then this is definitely one that you should check out. Or you could check out my final one here, my number one. And that is Terraforming Mars, Ares Expedition, but essentially Terraforming Mars. Any Terraforming, either the original game, obviously you'd have to get the base box. My personal preference for Terraforming Mars now and for the future will be Terraforming Mars, Ares Expedition. It's a smaller box. It's a lot of the same game, just condensed down into much more of just a card game with some resource bits. There's not as nearly as much that goes into this game as Terraforming Mars. So if you're wanting a deeper, heavier experience, then go buy the original game. But if you're wanting something that is much quicker to play, easier to pick up and play, smaller footprint, all those types of things. I don't know why this is in some foreign language here. Let's see if we can find a better picture here. So, what you're doing in Terraforming Mars is very... it's not quite as similar to It's a Wonderful World, but you're starting the game with like no cards down, very little resources that you're getting at the beginning of every turn. And what you're trying to do is build up your engine, literally. This player board here, which if you can get the collector's edition, is a dual layer player board, so it keeps all your bits in play. But the left side of the player board here represents when you take the resource gain action, how many of each resource you're going to get, and then these other larger wells hold those resources for you, which you can then use to spend on the cards that you lay down, the green and the blue cards. And those green and blue cards are going to be then turning back around and increasing your engine, creating when you take the gain resource action, gives you more of those resources. And then when you activate, it's also going to give you resources to spend on your blue cards here. And when you take the activate blue cards action, the more choices you have here, the bigger that action is going to be. So again, the whole concept is just building up your engine. Think of this player board as your engine, and adding cards out just improves this engine. That's the name of the game. Again, it's just, if you just clean it down to that, if you are into this mechanic, this is really a no-brainer for you. It's a Wonderful World is a little simpler and a little cleaner, but this one is, a little crunchier, but not much. And so there's a little bit more depth to it, which is probably why it made my, the top of my list over It's a Wonderful World. In Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition, the biggest difference that you're doing is that you are choosing which action you're going to take each round, and so is everyone else. You're going to choose one of these cards secretly, and you're going to play it down, and everyone else is going to have done the same thing, and then once everybody's ready, you reveal. And if everybody chooses the same action, you're only doing that action that round. But if everybody picks a different action, then everyone is going to be able to take that action in turn order, in action order, and in player order. But whichever action you choose, you're going to get a little bonus action within that action's wheelhouse. And you can't choose the same action twice in a row. So very interesting aspect of which action do I really need to take, which action do I think the other person is going to take. And again, just trying to build out your engine. This has a solo AI, which is very straightforward to manipulate. And this is technically a beat your own score solo AI. That's why it hasn't made my top solo AI list or anything like that. Because really just they determine what other action you get to take each round. But the challenge in this game is terraforming Mars. You're trying to get all of these ocean tiles out, and you're trying to get these 2 cubes up onto the meters. Actually, this is backward. This board's upside down, so these are already up at the top. These are already up into the white, and the ocean tiles are already out. But that's the name of the game. I really don't care about my score. It's whether I can accomplish terraforming Mars. And if I can or cannot do that in the allotted time limit, then I'm either successful or I'm not. So it's kind of beat your own score, but not really. For me, it's can you terraform Mars or not? The AI helps you along in this game a little bit. But again, this is my #1 engine builder. Again, if you're looking for something a little heavier with pretty much the same aspects, go just get terraforming Mars. Or if you want something lighter, smaller footprint, quicker, easier setup, things like that, go find you Ares Expedition. Easily be found at Target and friendly local game stores, Amazon, all that stuff. If you have the ability, though, I highly recommend the Collector's Edition because it has the dual layer player boards, makes quality of life playing, and these resource tins, makes quality of life playing the game so much better. So that is my top 7 engine builder games for my 12 Days of Christmas challenge. If you've been enjoying these videos, please consider giving them thumbs up and subscribing to the channel. And as always, thanks for watching. Have a great day.